Good day, friends. It's the 3rd of May, and today I'm going to discuss what's happening in Georgia, or better yet, the new color revolution America is trying to pull on Georgia, and in other words, destroy another republic and put in another dictatorship under the guise of a democracy, which is, by the way, if you haven't figured this out, America's the biggest enemy of republics and monarchies anywhere. They prefer to put in dictatorships or oligarchies everywhere because those are easy to buy. Republics and monarchies both have this tendency of thinking of themselves as patriotic to their people. Actual real republics, not the oligarchy crap that's in the U.S. Or no matter who you vote for, you get John McCain. So what's happening in Georgia? Georgia, as you know, it's ruled. The main power party is called the Georgian Dream, and they have started tilting toward Russia. So number one, right there, and they've done this for several reasons. After Saakashvili tried to become a dictator, failed, and lost a war to Russia that he started, EU's own report on that declared that Saakashvili was guilty of starting that war. And EU is no friend of Russia, never was. That's a 2008 war. And Georgia's steady attempts to get Abkhazia and South Ossetia to rejoin Georgia peacefully were all crushed and set back at least 10-15 years, if not more, by Saakashvili's adventure after it was ordered by Washington. Because that little bastard wouldn't do anything. He's afraid of his own shadow. That was the guy that was eating the ties. And when he saw one of his own jets in combat, and I thought it was coming for him, he ran away screaming, and his bodyguards had to jump on him, cover him, and scream in Georgian. Luckily, my wife speaks Georgian. And scream in Georgian for the media to leave, not to see this. They leave until the media leave. So yeah, that's the caliber of the guys that America likes to put in power. Cowardly, greedy, ambitious, cowardly, and willing to kill anybody to, have other people kill anybody to keep them in power. That's America's preferred client. So anyways, we go on to the story. The Georgian Dream refused to go into sanctions with the European Union, etc. And they started drifting toward Russia because the European Union overplayed its card. You know, while it was playing the anti-Russian card on different levels, it was winning the youth to some degree. And then the economic card would have still worked. But then, again, the West being the crusaders of everything that's non-human, they started pushing the gay agenda. LGBTQRWXYZ agenda. And Georgians are Orthodox Christians and extremely conservative. So they said no. And that really started moving toward Russia. Then they said, no, we're not going to do the sanctions and ruin our own economy. And then they dared to say, no, we're not going to open a second front in the Caucasus and die in mass for America and its profits. We're not going to sacrifice our people. We're not going to sacrifice our children so that American bloodthirsty oligarchs can get richer off the bodies of yet another country that they murdered. The way they always love to do it. And by the way, sooner or later, Americans, they'll murder you too. Because you're just a little better quality meat as far as they're concerned. Because you're closer to home. But you're still meat. So anyways, we go on. Georgia has a problem. Several problems. One, it has a president called Zourabichvili. To understand who Zourabichvili is, she is not a natural-born Georgian. She has Georgian roots, which means she was born in France. She served in the French Foreign Ministry. So she's a natural-born French citizen. Served in the French Foreign Ministry, retired from the French Foreign Ministry, the State Department for my American viewers. Her last position was ambassador to Georgia. America's puppet Saakashvili gave her citizenship. Now, Saakashvili turned Georgia from a presidential to a parliamentarian republic. So the president really doesn't have any power, per se, not much. A couple points. Because Saakashvili thought his party would stay in parliament in power forever, and he'd be able to stay in power forever. But he lost. And he lost big. And then he went and became a Ukrainian when America told him to do so. But and then governor of Odessa province, too. That American-led circus called foreign policy, and it's Muppets that it moves around as it needs to, the pawns. So we go further. Zourabichvili, who, by the way, I've never ever actually met anybody from any side that actually voted for her, but somehow she got elected. So she's directly against the government, and the thing that she can do two things. She can veto bills, but the bills can be overridden by a majority in parliament. And she can pardon people. So while the Georgian government arrests all these protesters, or particularly paid shills of the West, she keeps releasing them. And quite a few of which are murderers. And quite a few of which are murderers fighting for the Nazi regime in Ukraine that come back to try to overthrow the government. She keeps releasing them. Right now they're trying to impeach her and oust her. By the way, so this woman doesn't even speak Georgian. She's a French. She gets her salary from France. Her pension and her salary. And she gets her marching orders from Macron. Which brings us to the next issue. So the Georgians, who are swamped with American NGOs and European NGOs, swamped. I mean, a ridiculous level swamped. And they've been, and the worst of all of these is, of course, as always, U.S. aid. So Georgia has now been warned 3 times by Azerbaijan, by Iran, and by Turkey to put control over the Americans on their territory. Because U.S. aid, which is it's hard even to call it an NGO. I mean, it's in it 100% financed by the U.S. government, has been financing the anti-democratic opposition, the rebels, the sodomites in Azerbaijan, Iran, Turkey, and yes, in Russia too. So Georgia's been made this hub of tyrannical liberalism out of the U.S. Embassy. The Georgian government doesn't even know where the money's going because there are laws there aren't laws in place that allow it to. So in steps an NGO law to show financing. Foreign Agents Act. You know, the one that's been in the U.S. in effect since 1938. And most of Europe has the same kinds of laws. They tried to pass it last year and the opposition sprung up. And the opposition read American paid for shills and trolls. And the EU paid for shills and trolls. And they sprung up and they tried to do, they started mass protests, so the government backed down. But since then, the government's been warned by all of its neighbors. They're sick and tired of the Yanks financing these satanic movements in their countries through Georgia. So Georgia's determined to at least open up the view. And this is a very watered down law compared to what's in the U.S. But what's good for the gander ain't good for the goose. Not when it's American hypocrisy we're talking about, or European Union hypocrisy. The West is anything but non-hypocritical. Hypocrisy is the mainstream of the West, and that's how it is. So, next, they've started pushing this law again. And this time they're determined to pass this law. Because they're risking war with all their neighbors at this point, and Georgia being wiped out. And they don't want, plus they don't want, they stand against the very things that the United States government is illegally financing out of Georgia. They themselves, and the vast majority of Georgians stand against this. Sure, there's enough young people that have been brainwashed by that demonic entity called Soros and his demonic entity buddies. But the vast majority of Georgians are Orthodox Christians, very conservative Orthodox Christians. So now there's mass demonstrations, and it looks like we're going to be looking at a possible attempted coup, another one. Of course, we know that the coup leaders, once they get paid, and they can get Georgia, overthrow the Georgian government, bury this law and start a war with Russia aren't going to stick around. They'll take their American ill-gotten cash and they'll be gone to somewhere like Dubai or Europe, while Georgians get to die for another pointless war started by American vampires who are going to get richer off of this. And of course, we're not talking about the average American serf. He just gets to pay taxes and die when ordered to by his owners. And you're owned. If you haven't figured that out, by the way, any of my American viewers, that you're owned property, you're not freemen. I mean, if anybody hasn't figured that out, it's time to open their eyes. Take the shades off, for God's sakes. Hunter Biden could rape your child in the middle of the street and there wouldn't be a peep out of the U.S. government. He'd be called a brave man expressing his brave views. I mean, that's where you're at right now. And don't be looking at Trump for any help. He helped push through a bill to make sure there are warrantless searches that continue. So there you go. Your property, your owned property. Unfortunately, but that's the truth of it. And that's just how it runs. So until you wake up and do something about it, it's only going to get worse. So the United States government is once again trying to destroy another people to make a profit off of it, and to try to make things worse for Russia by sacrificing another couple million people and destroying another country, Christian country, because there's no bigger Satanists than Washington, D.C., the cabal of Satan on the Potomac. And everywhere they go, they try to destroy Christianity. That's their number one goal. And these pseudo-Christians like Johnson, who talks about his Christian faith all the time, the more you have to talk about something, the more it's bullshit. And I'll tell you why. People are judged by their actions, not by their words. In his actions, by the way, with him funding Planned Parenthood, transgender clinics and all that crap, his actions is satanic. And he is a Satanist. And you're run by Satanist America. And there you go, one more attempt to overthrow another government, another elected government, by the way, and force more of this crap on people. Cheers.